All right.
Good, thank you.
Okay, what's the trick?
Just push, you got it. Wayne's gotta learn, he's the keeper of the gate.
He's gonna have to do that.
I'm the gatekeeper, Rick.
Yeah, man.
Excuse me.
I was gonna say, thank you for the, yeah, I do. The other one was junk.
This thing's fantastic.
It is much better. Thank you. Didn't say anything.
Yes, please.
No, what?
Good evening and welcome to the August the 1st regular meeting of the Abingdon Town Council. I would like to ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Craig.
Here.
Mrs. Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Howard.
Here.
Mr. Humphreys.
Here.
Mayor Lowe.
Here. And we would like to ask our Assistant Town Manager and Clerk, Cecile Rosenbaum, to lead us in the pledge.
Please rise. Everyone join me in the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we're down to approval of minutes. Council, have you had a chance to review the minutes from the July 1st, 2016 regular organizational meeting and July 20th mid-month work session tour of town departments? corrections or additions? What's your pleasure?
Make a motion, we approve the July 1st regular meeting, but I left it about noon on the 20th, so I didn't really go the whole thing, but I'll make a motion on that first one for July 1st.
I'll second that. I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Craig.
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mayor Lo.
Aye. Okay, so July 20th, mid-month work session tour of town departments. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I move we approve those minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Craig.
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
I guess I'll abstain, since I was just there half the day.
Mr. Humphries.
And I'll abstain because I wasn't in attendance.
Mayor Lo.
Aye. Okay. Petitions and public hearings and first reading of ordinances, there are none. Second reading of ordinances, there are none. Consideration of any bids, none. Resolutions, none. We're down to reports from the town manager and assistant town manager. And the first thing on the agenda is consideration of moving the meeting date in September, as Monday is Labor Day.
Yes, and, thank you, Mayor Lowe. I just wanted to tell council, typically, since, the first meeting in September always falls on Labor Day, in the last several years, we've moved it to the Tuesday following that day, which would be September the 6th. So my recommendation would be that council, hold their meeting on Tuesday, September the 6th.
And that would be a work session at 5:30 and a regular council meeting at 7:30.
Yes, ma'am.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah, that's fine.
Wayne, is that okay with you?
It's okay with me.
Then I'll make the motion that we changed our regular schedule September meeting that falls on Labor Day to Tuesday after Labor Day, which will be Tuesday, September the 6th.
So, roll call, please.
Mr. Craig.
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mayor Lo.
Aye. Okay. So, this is for Mr. Kelly, consideration of request for traffic study relative to the sports complex property as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, if you'll recall, when we started working on the Meadows development, we knew that the town portion of that development would include a sports complex, and a traffic study was done on the commercial end of the development by Marathon at the onset of that project. It's now time for us to move to try to get a traffic study for our portion of the project, which is the sports complex, which would entail the traffic that will be entering and exiting when there are tournaments going on. It will also take into account the traffic flows that have been indicated by the commercial development. What we are asking for here tonight is simply for the council to authorize me to draw down the necessary funds from the previous bond issuance in order to procure the traffic study for the sports complex. We will proceed with that through an RFP process and request for proposals. And we will ultimately have a committee that will grade those proposals and make a selection and an award at a later point in time in terms of who does that traffic study. Mr. Dew and I will work on getting the request for proposals out to the appropriate parties, and likely we'll have to go outside of the region to get some good qualified proposals submitted. We generally have 2 council members on the committee who grade the proposals along with 3 or 4 staff members, and it's my understanding that we'll be using that same process again. Ultimately, all the proposals will be looked at. It will be narrowed down to 2 or 3, and then those 2 or 3 will be brought in for interviews and ultimately graded, and then 1 awarded. But for purposes of tonight, you would simply be authorizing me to draw down the necessary funds from the bond issuance to procure this traffic study.
Council, any questions? So what's your pleasure?
I move that we authorize Mr. Kelly to draw down the necessary funds for the traffic study and execute any necessary documents required.
And I'll second that.
Roll call.
Mr. Craig,
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson,
Aye.
Mr. Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mayor Lo.
Aye. And now we are down to Mr. Dew, would like to talk to us about some surplus.
Good evening, Ms. Mayor, members of council. This is a process we go through occasionally when town staff determines that some equipment or vehicles have outlived their useful life here at the town. We've reached that point again with one vehicle, a 1998 Dodge Ram pickup from the street department that's basically been used as a parts vehicle for the last couple of years, and a pickup bed cover from the fire department. And the way just as a reminder and for the new council members, the process is typically that we will make a proposal of vehicles and equipment that we deem surplus, but we need to get the council to authorize them as surplus before we can put them either online at publicsurplus.com or go out with a sealed bid. So I'm here tonight to ask you to consider declaring these 2 items as surplus.
Council, do you have any questions?
Was there what were the items that were to be surplus? Is there anything else other than your,
No, it's just the Dodge pickup and the pickup bed cover from the fire department. The pickup is from the street department, and the pickup bed cover is from the fire department.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, please, 2 items be declared surplus.
Second? Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Craig,
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson,
Aye.
Mr. Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
aye.
Mayor Lo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are down to consideration of certificate of appropriateness for Marathon Realty Corporation, owners P.O. Box 518, Abingdon, Virginia. Application for certificate of appropriateness for new construction, lighting, landscaping signage located near 440 Green Spring Road, Abingdon, Virginia, including a portion of tax map number 021-1-5B. Matthew Johnson, Director of Planning.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. We are here to consider the application for a COA or Certificate of Appropriateness for Marathon Realty. A little bit of background here. The COA is something that normally would be just handled at the Planning Commission level, and the signage component of that would be handled administratively by staff. But since this project is subject to the special use permit, the code does require the Planning Commission, to make a recommendation to council, and that's why we're here this evening. Council will have final authority on the decision here. I want to go ahead and say a little bit about the comprehensive signage plan. The comprehensive signage plan is a component that you will not be hearing about this evening. We originally thought that it would be on the August 1st agenda. We do think that it will likely be on the September 6th agenda. Because there were some concerns that the Planning Commission had about the signage plan. And so they're going to have a special meeting on August the 11th, next Thursday, not this week, next week, to consider some changes to the special comprehensive signage plan there. At the June the 27th meeting, the applicant did present the information that you're about to see this evening. You'll see it from the applicant themselves. The Planning Commission did consider this very thoroughly, and they moved to recommend approval of the COA to the Town Council with a couple of conditions. I want to read those to you. Number one, the applicant shall request the comprehensive signage plan within 3 months of the June the 27th Planning Commission meeting date. And number two, that a reduction in the amount of parking as required by the code be permitted from 470 spaces required down to 416 spaces. We felt that that would be, or the commission felt that that would be appropriate as it would be more environmentally sensitive. The vote was unanimous, with the exception of Mr. Schuman, who did abstain because of a conflict of interest. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time. However, I do know that the applicant is here and does have a presentation prepared as well.
Okay, so, and just a couple things before you step
Sure.
down. One of them is as this is presented, the signage will be kicked out of this. Signage will not be included in this at all.
That's correct.
Okay. And the other thing is tell us exactly what we're kind of looking at, if you would.
So there are several components to the COA. Most notably, you're looking at the aesthetics, the way the buildings are arranged, the site planning, the landscaping plan, the lighting plans, and those are the main components, except for the signage plan. Those are the main components that you're looking at. It's essentially aesthetics, the way the site is laid out, the way it will look, the way it will act. And I know that there are quite a few renderings that the applicant has, and we will be able to show you those this evening.
Matthew, I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
If the town decides to approve this COA, can you walk us through the development process from that point on? And so I'll have an understanding of that.
Sure. There are several components that are still outstanding. I know that the council will be included in the approval of a final plat. That is a document that will split up the land into several different components, several parcels, and will allow them to convey property at that point. At this point, most of it from here on out will be administratively approved. They have to make sure that their stormwater plans, their utility plans, erosion, soil, and stormwater plans, all of those will have to comply with our local code and state and federal laws. And we'll be reviewing those plans back and forth until they cure all of our concerns, and then they're approved. Those final plans will go back to the Planning Commission for presentation there as well.
And so after that, final plat will be prepared, and we'll have an opportunity.
The final plat is in a stage that they're working on it now. I know that they're trying to address a few concerns, and it will go to the Planning Commission first for their approval, and a recommendation to council will come from the Planning Commission on that final plat.
Okay. One more question.
Sure.
The applicant, if we approve this tonight, the applicant will begin all those design plans and, I guess, building plans and so forth, and they'll be spending a lot of money in that process. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all.
Oh, thank you. All right. I'll turn it over to Mr. Spangler from Marathon Realty.
Good evening, members of council.
Good evening.
Basically, per what's Matthew's comments, I've just got effectively the same presentation that was presented to the Planning Commission last month. I'd be happy to go through it. It's basically broken down to the four sections of the COA that we have ready to present tonight. As Matthew stated, the comprehensive signage plan is still in process, and we will hopefully be able to have that in front of the council at the September 6th meeting. Start with site plan. This shows the initial concept plan that was submitted as part of our rezoning packet. And what I've done is highlighted the area that the certificate of appropriateness is over, which is effectively 10.4 acres. Our initial plan showed a grocery anchored shopping center with attached retail, with a majority of the parking in front of the buildings. So after many meetings with the Planning Commission, with members of the public, and having several design meetings for the public at various aspects, we reworked the site plan to detach the buildings and pull a majority of the buildings away from the far northern property lines of this 10.4 acre parcel. And then what that did in turn, it creates a village-type concept, but also hides the parking internal to the structures. Just kind of an overview of the evolution of the site plan. Again, detached buildings, creation, commercial village concept, minimizing visual impacts of parking lots from the right-of-way, pedestrian orientation and gathering places, incorporated sidewalks throughout the development, and created larger usable areas around the retail components, I'll show that later, to encourage public gathering opportunities, building reorientation, pulled buildings toward the property lines with minimum to no impact on creeper trail view sheds, added berms, which you'll see in the landscaping plans to further mitigate any remaining minor visual exposure from the trail, and then parking requirements, as Matthew alluded to earlier. We reduced the parking count versus code in order to add these landscaped islands, berms, as well as minimizing visual impacts to the overall lot. Lighting plan. This is a photometric plan. It's probably going to be impossible to read on this presentation, but effectively we've designed it to have 0-foot candles at the creeper side and residential property lines. All the lights will have LED fixtures with shielding mechanisms, and then we're within the 24-foot poles on 3-foot bases, which is within the constraints of the certificate of appropriateness. Any questions so far? Landscaping plans. This is the overall landscaping plan. It's difficult to read. It's cordoned off into select sheets, which I'll go through and do a little bit of an overview, but it's substantial. It represents over 450 new trees that we're adding, 3,500 shrubs, and about 6,000 plus different kinds of variations of grasses just on this 10-acre piece of property. All the other components of the development will have to come through and go through the same certificate of appropriateness and have their own sections of light scamming. But everything that we're showing is just based on the portion of the development that we will retain ownership on. Again, evolution of the landscape plans, professional design, based on comments from all stakeholders. We felt that it was appropriate to add a local landscape architect, Quinn Crogwell, to the development team. She did an excellent job. We utilized heavily landscape berms along the northern property lines to mitigate and eliminate impacts to the creeper trail view sheds. Expansive native materials utilization and focus on incorporating high-quality, diverse, and native materials in the overall plan. And then the softened visual impacts. The plan is designed to enhance architectural elements while also softening the visibility from the outside the development. And again, this just goes through the various sections of the site plan to show the landscape detail. Probably difficult to read, but I mean, as you can see, it's quite extensive in the interior parking lot islands around all of the buildings to help shield some of those views, although the buildings, as you'll see, have high-quality materials on all elevations. That shows a little bit of a retaining wall aspect. But this is what I wanted to focus on to the top, which is the northern property line. That's a heavily landscaped berm that we've added, 10 feet in height and 30 to 40 feet in width across the whole top of the northernmost property line. Again, to just based on feedback from the public, from the Planning Commission, from the Town Council, to help, and even from the Creeper Trail Club, to help find ways to mitigate those views from the Creeper Trail. Again, that's just a continuation of that berm across the rest of the northern property line to the recreational component, which would be to the far right there where the plant or that berm particular ends. This is a cross-section of the berm, just showing that a typical cross-section, the berm's around 10 feet tall, 30 to 40 feet in actual width. In the materials that Quinn's put on there, range from anywhere 6-inch grass up to 25-foot tree once mature. And this is just the planning schedule of that plan. And then, so we bring all these together, we put some renderings together just to kind of see how those would come. This is what we presented as part of the initial rezoning package. It's changed substantially. As you might recall in the site plan, this had a Food City grocery store, pretty substantial height with attached retail. It's gone down to this, and what we've done is we changed the brick color, the trim color, we've added stonework. These are colors that have been approved in the historic district. We've added an entablature or dental work aspect that is similar to what's seen on the Barter Theater or Sinking Springs Church. We've detached the building. We've reduced the scale significantly to, again, help along with the berms and the landscaping to help with any kind of view shed issues. That's the depiction from the north going in off of what we call Robertson Road, but incorporates all the landscaping that we have planned. And even though it looks like landscaping, a lot of landscaping, it doesn't do it justice. The renderer looked at Quinn's plan and was just like, we can get a good majority of it on it, but it just can't get all of her planning on there. But this is the retail component, the 3 detached shops. As you can see, the brickwork, the dental work at the top, the details, the trim, all, and the stonework at the bottom all match the Food City. And as I discussed in some of the gathering, we've extended the patio areas to the exterior of these shops to garner outdoor patio areas and whatnot, and given there's tree wells and whatnot, and, just with the prospects that we've talked to, they're excited about utilizing those areas for some of the restaurant uses. That's the rear of one of the retail buildings, and as you can see, we've wrapped all 4 sides of the elevations in the brick, the stonework, and the dental work, so there's not going to be any side of the building, including the Food City, that doesn't have top quality materials. And then as you can see, that's another depiction of what the outdoor seating area can be. This is actually the rear of the Food City, backing up to Cummings. We've dressed it up significantly, and this architectural detail is, to have an architectural detail at the rear of the shops. It's to allow signage and visibility from Cummings Street, but very importantly, it acts as a shielding mechanism to the HVAC units that are located on the rooftop. That's the gas and go. That's along Cook Street, which would be adjacent or right beside the side elevation of the Food City. But again, this is dressed up to match the architecture with the black trim. The columns will be wrapped in brick, and the kiosk will match with the stonework and the brickwork, the rest of the buildings. Just as an overview, evolution of the elevation design, the historic district influence incorporated entablature element, including like the Barter Theater, United Methodist, Sinking Springs, as well as materials details already improved in the Abingdon Historic District. Unique elevation design changes and/or addition of brick color, trim, stonework, awning color, rear elevation, and accent details represent a truly distinctive Food City design for Abingdon. Materials, integrated high-end materials, including brick and stone, and accent details across all retail components and on all elevations. And that's important that even the rear of the buildings have those applications. And reduce the scale of the buildings to minimize visual impacts outside the development in conjunction with the landscaping design. And so the rest of the presentation, well, here's actually some of the materials, colors. We brought those for the Planning Commission and the planning staff to look at. But if you have any questions on the manufacturers or the colors of the brick or the stone or the aluminum, here's a breakdown of those components. Here's some aerial views. That's coming from Cummings Street. If you're coming around the roundabout down Cook Street, that would be kind of a bird's eye view of development. As you can see, all sides of the buildings are brick, and even the rear of the Food City, takes on a front exterior look. And that's coming in off Cook Street with how the gas and go is positioned along the Food City. That's an example of the landscaping around the retail buildings and where a future monument sign may be placed to show each of the tenant uses in the development. But that's still to be determined through the Planning Commission meetings of the scale of those particular signs, but that's just a placeholder of where those might be. That's an entrance off the north to Retail 3, I believe, which is the one retail component to the top, but just again showing kind of a visual perspective of what it might be look like to drive into this project. That's another view of one of the retail buildings, again showing outdoor areas and the landscaping components around. And then a aerial perspective taken from, not necessarily where the creeper trail is, but the creeper trail would be to the rear of this particular design, looking towards Cummings Street, but just another perspective of the overall project. And then one of the requests of the Planning Commission was to kind of show a little bit of scale and the large of these buildings. So we've put the depths and the heights and the widths of the building, which are typical for retail components and are typical for our Food City. But the highest height of the Food City, other than the parapet, which I believe is at 35 feet, is at 27 feet 4 inches. And that concludes the overall presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Council, do you have any questions?
I have several, Kathy, but someone else can go ahead of me if they want to.
Go ahead.
Mr. Spangler, there's been a change from the conceptual plan to the preliminary site plan that you just presented.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain to me what that change is, or explain to what the change is and why it was made?
If I can get the presentation.
I'm talking about it relative to the connections to Green Spring Road, basically.
As far as the site plan, are you talking about the overall development?
The
plan?
overall development.
And you're talking about the Cook Street and Green Springs VDOT?
No, I'm
portion?
talking about the connection point on Green Spring Road for the whole
Mhm.
project.
Mhm.
That changed significantly, and I'd like for you to explain to us why that change was made.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to talk about that. I'd be happy to put my 2 cents in, but that's a town and VDOT project.
Yeah.
And we effectively had to tie into what they have engineered.
Right.
The ordinance, the purpose of the ordinance, it states clearly that the overburdening of the infrastructure should not take place, and it's not talking about inside the development.
Mr. Craig, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to interrupt because that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about the certificate of appropriateness, not the entrance or the road. And so those are two different issues.
Kathy, it
The
says-
road is the town of Abingdon's.
Let-
Mr.
let me-
Kelly, can you,
Let me read the intent of the ordinance to you, and we can discuss that, but
but
I'm-
we're not hearing the ordinance right now. That is not what this is.
Well,
We're not
it's-
talking about the ordinance right now.
we're talking about the
This is a
historical
certificate.
overlay ordinance, yes, ma'am?
No, we're not. This is the certificate of appropriateness for the site plan.
For the
This is not what we're not discussing the ordinance.
Well,
We've
when-
already had 2 public hearings on the ordinance,
When-
and that's already been decided except for what the judge is in the judge's hands, and we're not going to have that on the record.
When will we discuss the change that I'm talking about?
You want me to address that? There will be a site plan review process at a later point in time, and of course, it will likely incorporate some of the information that comes from our traffic study into that. I think what Mr. Craig is getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the entrance off of Green Springs Road into the development has changed from the original location in the concept of this project. That's nothing that has been approved in the site plan aspects or anything, but certainly that route has changed.
I understand that, but Mr. Spangler's going to head with final development plans, and he's going to spend a lot of money, and there's a big problem where the entrance is right now. We're all familiar with that. We left a curve in Green Spring Road. And I think we should discuss if it's wise to give him an okay to do all of this, and then have him spend probably, I don't know, Mr. Spangler, $500,000, $1 million in engineering plans, something like that.
Easily, you know.
And
but
if
to
we're
that-
not in agreement and we haven't found a solution to that problem, I mean, I think it's appropriate to do it now, but if you don't want to do it now, we'll go ahead and
Yeah,
spend the money.
I've been in meetings with VDOT that have looked at both, and everybody was comfortable with the design, including the representatives that
I'm
were
not
part of
talking
that.
about the design. I'm talking about the concept has changed, and we all know that in all of the discussions we had, one purpose of this project was to get the curve out of Green Spring Road that has been identified as an accident problem, a safety problem. It's been on the town's website, and I'm concerned about you spending all that money and we don't have a solution. And when we find one, it may affect you and your money.
And not to mention the lawsuit that's still pending as well.
And I can't speak to that, but, you know, it's, looking at the Green Springs Road, you know, we're just working off the plans that we have from the town. I don't want to speak for John Dew or VDOT, but that was an appropriate, per meetings that I've sat in, solution with what we had to work with. And I believe that we are getting rid of the full S curve. but there-
One curve, yes,
one
that's
curve,
correct.
So
But
that
the-
aids in the traffic.
The bad curve, almost 90 degrees, will remain, and it is a definite, I'm sure you recognize that that's a public safety concern because it has been identified as such. So what I'm asking you is, do you actually want to proceed and spend all this money and maybe have a change that affects your site plan?
We're working off
design?
the assumption that the plans as they're designed will be the plans that move forward. And that's the only thing we can work off of as adjacent property owner.
Well,
Mr. Dew, will the traffic impact analysis and the study, will that give us greater answers to those questions?
The traffic impact analysis for the sports complex will primarily focus on the traffic involved itself. You know, not necessarily address, typically they won't address some concern like that, like a curvature of a road, an issue like that. Mr. Taylor?
I think as we move forward through the site plan review process, the road project of the infrastructure going into the development is a town project, which we will obviously be looking at and trying to provide the best possible access points within the confines of the traffic analysis studies that we've been given. Now, that, as I think Mr. Johnson alluded to earlier, is something that will not come back before the council, but will be approved at the planning commission level in terms of the actual site plan approval. But that has, all the details of the site plan have not been completed yet, and they will require more thorough review of those plans.
Greg, let me ask you this. You know, we're going to be doubling the traffic, or your Mr. Spangler's traffic study shows that we'll be doubling the traffic from your development on Green Spring Road. And also, we all know there will be additional traffic from the sports complex. Now, I think we should discuss this. I know, I'm a traffic engineer, and I know that the accidents are going to increase very, very significantly if that curve is left in place. Now, what I'm kind of getting at is, and I think one option is for us to not connect Green Spring Road to the development and make all the traffic go through the one entrance. That's actually the only solution I know right now to that problem. So do you really want to proceed with design? Wouldn't that affect your site design and, if that was done or not?
Well, if that was done, obviously it would affect our site design, but again, you know, we're going off on a little bit of a tangent here than I think what we're, you know, here to present, but we're working under the assumption, a reasonable assumption, that based on where the VDOT and town plans are at this stage of the design process, that's the design that we're moving forward with, or we have to assume that we're moving forward
Well,
with.
let me ask the staff.
And it's out of our hands, obviously. It's a town
that's
project.
fine, that's fine. Let me ask the staff, are you not worried about that? Proceeding with the plans and leaving that curb in there and based on the traffic information you've got?
Mr. Craig, we want to make the safest route possible. If we're going to have this development, we want it to be safe, and we want it to be the best that it can possibly be to go in and out of. There are still hurdles that are beyond, I understand the point you're making with Mr. Spangler in terms of them spending additional money, and if something were to happen, for example, with the Corps of Civil Engineers, or an additional traffic study were to reveal something significant that could impact this, then they may have spent some additional money on the project. But we, the town staff, we're working very diligently to try to make it the safest possible way in and out of this facility. You and I have had this discussion,
Right.
and the point is well taken in terms of the grade from leaving half of the curve there. If we were able to go the alternate route, which was originally proposed, perhaps that would reduce the grade. In our discussions last week, we talked that it might slightly reduce that grade down somewhat going into that property. But I think Mr. Spangler and Marathon have proceeded in good faith thus far on the certificate of appropriateness, which is before us now. And I think at the appropriate time, when the site plan is finalized and the Corps of Civil Engineers gets to all the review that they have to get through with, we'll ultimately know whether or not this road will be safe or not.
But Greg, back to my point, and you know, I'm really, really concerned about safety if it remains as it is. Maybe this makes sense to you all, but it doesn't to me. If it affects his site design, if we make a change that's required to make that safe, then what's the point in proceeding? And really, it doesn't matter to me if he proceeds, but if we design the road and it doesn't suit his development, there is a huge problem. I mean,
And I think you're right, Mr. Craig. I think one of the things, though, I think that probably they're weighing their risks and looking at what that they think possibly could do. And I think that, you know, your point's well taken. The safety is the first, and you know, as you and I have talked many times, the safety for to make it the best development that can be is what we're all out to try to do. And so I think there's a calculated risk in any and all of this. I think that I can't speak for them. They have to speak for themselves, but it sounds like they're willing to take that risk, and that's why he's up here presenting this. He knows that's not a done deal. He knows that it's not also the Corps of Engineers have things to review, and there could be several changes, you know, in the offing. Lord have mercy for the Planning Commission that's put him through the ringer and having him redesign. Do you know how many times we've had redesign, ask you for redesign so far?
I've been in front of the commission 7 straight meetings, effectively all of 2006.
So for 7 straight meetings, we've been in there and for redesign and for trying to improve. And I think he's going with a good project, so I know what he's looking at right now is not the whole project. And I do know that we do have that, I guess I would call it, Wayne, a second bite of the apple.
Well, Rick, I agree that the planning commission's done a great job with what they've done. I want to be clear on something. Now, you're saying that you're proceeding on the basis that the town council or the roadway design is going to be as it is right now. Is that correct?
That's the assumption that we're working off
Okay, I
of,
wanna-
based on the plans that have been submitted to VDOT, based on the preliminary plat that's been approved, again, albeit at the planning commission level, but it's based on that road design. We're effectively an adjacent property owner that are tying into that road network. That's not a portion of our project. And so that is an assumption that we have to make.
And you're willing to proceed on that and not come back to us if you have to make changes? That's all I want to know.
If something drastically occurs with the design of the road, we'll probably have to come back. But
Drastic
that's a
might
deci-
mean
that's
not
a-
connecting Green Spring Road to the development.
Well,
Okay,
you know,
okay.
the way this is designed, and it's not been mentioned, but if talking about traffic, I think we need to talk about all aspects of what this development means. Obviously, the Exit 17 project was pushed up to funding, and I know that's outside of what you're talking about,
Yes.
but we've got to look at the holistic
Well, I just wanted to know.
traffic
I'm-
impacts of the project.
I'm an engineer, and I've worked with
And-
developers.
and I respect
all
that and understand
I just
that.
want to be clear that you recognize, when you're going to spend all this money, that there may be some changes made that drastically affect.
Everything's a risk,
Okay.
and we are
Okay.
comfortable
Okay.
with what we're doing.
And also, in regards to the lawsuit, I want to make that clear as well, that
We are
if something
fully-
happens, that this lawsuit, that the Friends of Abingdon win that lawsuit.
I don't think we need to talk about, we are not at liberty to discuss that lawsuit at all.
So we're going to take the risk.
We're not going to talk about the lawsuit at all. And we're not going to talk about any of the components of the lawsuit at all. We are not hearing this. This is not the judge's chambers.
Let me say one last thing on the topic, and that is my primary driving focus at this point in time, and I think the staff, is to try to work the sports complex component at this point in time, which is why we're authorizing the traffic study to be done on that. Hypothetically, if something were to happen to where we weren't able to develop the sports complex, it does detrimentally impact this project, because the town of Abingdon cannot afford to put the money into the infrastructure to make it go forward at that point in time that we have. Do I think something's going to happen? No, not necessarily, but just want you to know that there's a lot of other things that have to happen before there's the total build-out of the roads, before there's total build-out of the commercial development, and ultimately the sports complex. I've always viewed it, rightly or wrongly, based on discussions with engineers, staff, as this is a 2 to 3 year project for the total build-out of this thing. And yes, we are going to try to make this the safest complex to get in and out of for both the sports complex and the commercial development, and to try to ease the congestion on Cummings Street at the same time. And you know, I think all the staff that's here who've been actively involved in this, we've been working on this for, I guess, going on a year now. At this level, we worked on it for 2 or 3 levels through the negotiation process, trying to acquire the property. We're going to do everything in our power to make it be the best project that it can possibly be at the staff level, and I think you all as town council will hold the staff to that. So that's what I have to say.
And again, I'm going to reiterate that Mr. Craig, I'm going to reiterate that Mr. Craig and Mr. Humphreys are assigned to the traffic study. We have held our public hearings. Everybody spoke. and everybody spoke at the Planning Commission. We are here tonight to look at the certificate of appropriateness.
I have a couple more questions.
Sir.
And Kathy, I'll let you know that topography is one of the items specifically mentioned in the certificate of appropriateness. I would like to know, can you just explain to us, it's like if I'm standing on Cook Street at the or maybe Shoney's parking lot, and I look at that hillside over there, as I understand your plan, you're going to lower the top of that hill by a significant amount, probably 30, maybe even 50 feet. I can't remember.
Somewhere
Steve.
between there, if you look.
But anyway, that fill is going to be used to build the town's road and to put fill in the area that.
It's going to be used to build the road network we were just alluding to, Cook Street and Green Springs Road, infrastructure on our piece of property, and then over to the town's recreational component.
Okay. Now, when you do that, there have been some concern expressed by the public that there are archaeological, part of our history is there. And I guess you have done a study. That's what I've heard. I haven't
mean,
confirmed it.
Obviously, Matter and Craig's very well respected. You're aware of SNME? SNME?
Yes, yeah.
That's who we utilize as a third party, unbiased third party to do a very extensive archaeological study.
Okay, there's some people, and I'm not saying I'm one of them, there are people that have expressed concern about that study because they haven't been able to see the methodology that SNME used and that kind of thing. I understand that may not be available to the town. Will you release that study so that any of those concerns can be eliminated?
Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Craig, and I got your phone message today and wasn't able to get back to you, but we contacted these folks. They have turned that study over to DEQ and to the Corps of Civil Engineers, and that study can be made available to the council.
Okay.
There are probably some proprietary things in that study that need to be maybe redacted or protected in certain regards, and I'm happy to talk, or Ms. Eisenhower happy to talk to you about that.
We did utilize a very well-respected firm within the Southeast for that report. And it's a very extensive report.
Okay, I have some concerns about how the drainage is handled because there's been a lot of questions that have been asked at the Planning Commission, and I don't think they've been answered.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can't answer these, Steve. I understand it if you can't.
Our
Maybe
engineer's not
maybe
here
I-
tonight, but I can see if I can. If not, I can defer to John. He's seen some
Okay, all
preliminary
right.
plans.
I'd like for somebody just to give the people an overall view, because I don't think that's ever been done, of where the drainage goes, and we've got ponds involved, and I'm not talking about the small ponds. I'm talking about the big pond on the town's property. Would one of you all take the time to explain how that drainage system works?
I don't think we have the plans here tonight to get into that, just because I was focused on the 10.4 acres for the certificate of appropriateness presentation. But whether it's, our engineers or John Dew's staff, who obviously has, engineers on staff that have reviewed those documents, I'm sure they'd be happy to sit down with you and explain it.
Well, I want the public to hear, so they understand,
that's not
if that's
my-
okay. I understand this, it may not be, so I'll ask John.
But again, DEQ has to approve that. That stormwater runoff, it falls under state guidelines, and DEQ has to approve that.
Kathy,
It's-
I know that.
And you obviously understand that it has to go through
I do.
a multitude of approval
Okay.
processes and approval
Let me
bodies.
get to my specific question then. The main part of the runoff is going to go to a retention basin on the town's property. Is that correct?
A portion of it.
And you know, I know that DEQ has to approve that retention basin design and all of that. I understand all that. Then it goes from the retention pond to a pond that's, I guess that pond is a wet pond right now. Is that correct?
It is.
And it's going to stay wet. Is that right? So it's just going to be expanded so the water level can go up. And I understand that there are treatment requirements for that. Is that
Extensive.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Water quality requirements. I understand that is basically a sediment, some type of a sediment removal and some type of phosphorus removal. I guess it's a sand filter. Is that correct?
I'd have to defer to our
Anyway, it's going to get
engineers
that type of treatment. One of the property owners that flows through, or the pond that she has where it comes out of the retention pond, has expressed a lot of concern about anything that would come off of your parking lot, and I guess the town's parking lot goes into that too, right?
Say that last part.
I said anything that will come off of your parking lot, like antifreeze or something like that, the regulations don't cover that. So the state regulations don't cover that. She's concerned about her animals drinking out of that pond. Are you concerned about that?
I know that Virginia has some of the most stringent requirements to pass, as you know. Ms. Harmon, who you're alluding to, I think.
I'm going to have to stop you all. This is part of the lawsuit. We cannot discuss this in council chambers. This issue is part of the lawsuit.
The only thing that I could add is that I do know that Ms. Harmon raised concerns to the Planning Commission, and in there were specific concerns about water runoff, about flooding, about pollutants that would have been in the water. At that time, we asked her as a Planning Commission. We gave her the names and people that she could contact the staff of Abingdon. I actually talked today, and she hasn't tried to contact any of those to find out answers that they have. So, that's that's the concern that I would have is that I know she has concerns, and there's going to be some answers we have and some we don't. But I think that those could be passed on, that if you talk to Mr. Dew, or if you talk to Greg, or if you talk to some of the people who might be able to have some answers, some of the staff. The Planning Commission really wanted to try to it was beyond the scope of the Planning Commission to be able to even answer those questions, although there were concerns because we didn't know, exactly how that would affect you. So that being said, that's why that I wanted to make sure that I was hoping that you had contacted these people so we could go forward.
Sometimes I thought they might contact me. I'll be there in the morning.
Thank you.
I'll be there in the morning. I'll be there in the morning.
Mr. Spangler, I'm not really trying to give you a hard time.
I
I'm trying
understand.
to
I was
help you.
expecting.
What I was really getting at is that I know the town is the NPDES holder of the permit. So I guess that means they're responsible for the maintenance of the pond and whatever comes out of the pond. So what I was getting at is, I don't know this and nobody else knows this, but I believe that I'm right about this. There may be some chemicals that come in there that nobody knows whether they are in sufficient quantity to affect our animals or not. If you or we or whoever has to design some further treatment to protect our animals, if that's found out when we have an opportunity to research it thoroughly, will that having a major effect on your site plan, in allowing you to proceed? Do you anticipate that or not?
No, I don't anticipate
Okay.
it having an effect. I mean, we'd be open to any kind of conversation that our engineer feels appropriate. We've got water maintenance covenants that will be drafted between the parties and agreed upon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Council, anything else?
I'm going to ask about the dynamite charges. There's animals that are beloved pets and in that area, as well as livestock and all kinds of adjoining properties, and also possible home damage. Have you all made any recommends to go talk to the people that live on Green Spring Road and talk to them about possible damages or removal of animals before you do any
I'd be happy to
charging?
talk to anybody. I've talked to a lot of people on Green Springs Road, and there's several people I can't talk to because of the lawsuit that you have alluded to earlier. But we'd be happy to have a conversation before any type of work started. But again, with everything else part of this development, we would go through the proper protocols and requirements as dictated by the governing bodies on doing that type of work.
Well, there is a case of a sonic boom in Ogden, Utah, where some sheep were killed. So just to put that on the record,
Okay.
animals can get scared literally to death. And I know if anybody in this audience has a beloved pet, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It's priceless.
I've got one myself.
Okay.
Mr. Humphries? Mr. Howard? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, council, what's your pleasure?
I think the purpose tonight was to consider this certificate of appropriateness, and I'd like to go ahead at this time and move that we do approve Marathon Realty's application for this as recommended unanimously. I think there's one person abstained by the planning commission at their July the 25th meeting, so I'll go ahead and make a motion we approve this.
I will second that motion as it pertains to lighting, landscaping, and new construction.
I'll amend that, my part.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. Craig,
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson,
Nay.
Mr. Howard,
Aye.
Mr. Humphries,
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, Abingdon Senior Center, Natalie Graham.
I am Natalie Graham. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you. We are no longer the senior center. I came to work there in April and immediately began to try to get onto your agenda because the one thing that I was asked by the board of directors to do was to actually improve the financial standing of the center. And obviously, to do that, it meant to change the name so that we could expand the programming and do a better job of generating revenue to offset expenses. Sent a letter to you all April 29th to get on your agenda, but we found out that the May meeting was already too crowded. So we were told that we would get on the June agenda, and we were planning towards that purpose because we wanted to share all these plans with you all. What happened at that time was, I think, you had so many issues you were dealing with that we were asked to wait and not come to the June meeting, but come in July. And then, of course, you didn't have a July meeting. So here we are in August, and it's a little late to start trying to tell you about why we changed the name and what we changed it to, and the issues with regard to the website, and of course the new logo and so forth. The reason I bring that up is because I brought with me Christine, where most of you, or some of you I should say, know her very well. I felt like I was a lucky person when I found her to take over the marketing of this new program that we have. Now I'm gonna turn this over to her because she's gonna share with you all what the changes are we made and what the plan is for the future, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lowe and councilmen and women. First off, I'd like to thank you for the $22,500 that you do provide for the Community Center of Abingdon. We appreciate those funds, and under the leadership of Natalie, we're really being responsible with those. We've developed a new website, the communitycenterofabingdon.com. We've planned new events such as a painting class, different dances. We are developing print materials to advertise the Virginia Ballroom so we can do a better job of renting that facility and helping offset costs. We're working with the town of Abingdon, the CVB, to bring groups in, motor coaches, so they can dine in our Virginia Ballroom. So new name, new logo, new website, and we also wanted to introduce a new campaign that we unveiled today. It's called the 5 for 5 Meals on Wheels Drive. And as you all know, there are 55,000 people in Washington County. Hopefully, we can count on 5,000 of those people to donate $5, at least $5. Of course, we welcome larger donations, but we wanted the community to feel like they could participate in this fund drive. And this is to replace the money for Meals on Wheels. We deliver to disabled and homebound seniors, and I started at the Community Center of Abingdon as a volunteer for Meals on Wheels. So it's a program near and dear to my heart, and I hope that we can continue it. We are trying to raise $25,000 in the next 5 weeks. So right before Labor Day is when we hope to have this done. But do you have any questions for me or the Community Center of Abingdon?
No, ma'am. There you go.
There's two right there.
Thank you.
Here's the money right there.
I use check free. I don't have.
Again, I just want to say thank you for the money that you do give the Community Center of Abingdon. We're working to make that a more vibrant and robust center, and we're really excited about the things to come in the future. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, I've worked with Christine on the Tourism Advisory Committee, and I know that if anybody can be of great assistance to you, it will be Christine. Thank you. Okay, so we are now down to old business. There is none. Just for the public's information, we have changed the outline of the agendas somewhat. We hear all town department budget line business in the work sessions, so that any presentations now are made upstairs as the community center did tonight, so that the public has an opportunity to hear those items. And we have a lot of old business on those agendas, as in the historic properties, and I don't know, I'm not going to go through it all because I'll forget something, but it's listed on the work session agenda that is on the table. And with that, we are going to matters not on the agenda, and members of the public may address council for 3 minutes for matters not presently on the agenda. Please state your name and address.
Hello, I'm Rich Macbeth, 1139 Panorama Drive in Abingdon, Virginia. And I, for one, want to thank the council for what they're doing with the having the sports center. We need that thing real bad. And I know there's been a lot of people up here, some come up and complaining and everything else, but I want to thank you guys for standing firm on this. We've got about 1,800 kids in Washington County, and we need a place for them to play and to grow. So I'm for one for this. I also want to thank for the opportunity that looks like we're going to get started on exit 19, Southport Empire Drive. So I appreciate some more updates. I saw there's some things going on up there at the old flower place. The taxidermist, I think, is going in there. But anyway, thanks again. I appreciate it.
I will say for the record, we need to thank Delegates Pillion and O'Quinn, and actually Kilgore.
Yeah.
And we need to thank Senator Carrico, because they got on board with this and made sure that both exit 19 and exit 17 were made priorities and put in the VDOT plan. And for the members of the public that don't know this, House Bill 2 changed the way VDOT funds roads. Used to, exit 17's been on the 6-year plan ever since I've been on the council. Now, with House Bill 2, once it makes it to the plan, it has to be funded and seen to completion. So both of those interstate exits have been placed on the 6-year plan.
Yeah, I've been actively petitioning that at least for the last 15 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they really
appreciate
got
that.
on
It is
board and,
true.
and worked hard for that this past legislative session.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Amanda Pillion. I live at 205 Stonewall Heights. I'm back to speak again in favor of the sports complex. I realize that there seems to be a much more vocal contingent speaking against it. This does not mean that support for the complex has vanished. Even though I have personally been yelled at in meetings and chastised on social media and chased down in public spaces to be fussed at about my opinions, I am still here to express my belief that we can have differing opinions and remain kind and respectful to one another. I feel that it is very important to express my support for this complex and my belief that it is a complement to the trail and to our town. In fact, some of the opposing voices that speak in hopes of saving the trail were the same voices that opposed the trail in its infancy. I don't want to talk about tax revenues or job creation or tourism or any of those impacts that all of this might have. I want to present you with some statistics that Abingdon Little League has published from this past season. This spring, there were over 430 children participating in t-ball, baseball, and softball. There were 36 regular season teams and 5 all-star teams. Countless adults volunteered their free time to work on the field, serve concessions, coach, and call the games. This all happened here in our beautiful town on our sadly outdated, crowded fields. We talked earlier about public safety issues. Russell Road is a certain public safety issue. It is dangerous to cross that road and there's inadequate parking. In fact, Mr. Howard was there. One night there had been a fender bender. There were at least 2 police vehicles and at least 2 fire vehicles, lights everywhere, and I went to cross the crosswalk and 2 cars passed and refused to let 2 families cross the crosswalk with a police presence. People don't stop at the crosswalk. It is not safe. Many children, in addition to Little League, play on travel teams. There are many, many, many more children who would love to have the opportunity to do that, but they don't have the resources to travel. I think that it would be great for our town to increase the chances for every child in this town to get to play organized sports, sports that they don't have to go out of town to play. I'd love for more people to see this wonderful town, and this is a great way to share it with them. Highland Soccer Club also had large numbers of participants. I'm not personally involved with them, so I don't know a lot about it. But it could be argued that these 2 team sports bring more youth activities to Abingdon families than anything else. Our town needs to remember to focus on amenities for families. They are our growth, our tax base, our employees, our volunteers. We cannot focus solely on senior citizens, although that is also very important. So baseball and other organizations that will benefit from this project have impacted the lives of so many children. Many of these kids have fewer positive influences or opportunities to be healthy in their lives and in their homes. We owe it to them to keep extracurricular sports available. Extracurricular sports keep our children healthy. They breed good citizens. We need more for the children of this town in every way and always. I simply cannot believe that any one of you would argue that point. It's imperative that the town follows through with this project, and it's imperative that it does it in the most expedient fashion possible. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address.
I'm Carla Dolce, and I live at 315 Lowland Street in Abingdon. And thank you, Ms. Patterson, for raising the fact of the pendency of the lawsuit as an issue in the marathon development. Now, nobody needs to discuss the merits of that lawsuit, but the pendency is important to me as a taxpayer, because as I see it, the town council is going forward as though losing that lawsuit will have absolutely no effect whatsoever on the marathon development. And I think that's probably not correct. And I think the pendency, the fact of the pendency of that lawsuit needs to be considered and possibly slow down the development of the marathon project until that lawsuit is resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jane During, 128 Crestview Drive. And I'd like to talk about something else if you're open to it.
We are.
I notice on your next work agenda, you've got tourism zones on that work session. And I think we've all been a little distracted by one thing, and in the meantime, the greatest and oldest magic trick in the book has been happening. Our downtown is disappearing. Last count, I think we had about 20 vacant spaces downtown. And a lot of people might see that as a terrible thing. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to take the tools, and I encourage you to spend a lot of time when you plan on this downtown. You've got Kevin Costello, really good at what he does, wearing 2 hats right now. And then you've got the Main Street program, you've got the tourism zones. Take whatever the time it needs and put a plan. A few years ago, Bristol's, Virginia, and Tennessee noticed that their downtown was dying. If you walk out of Paramount Theater at 10:30 at night right now, you can take a right and have a quiet little stroll, or if you've got about an hour, you can get online and get a donut at Blackbird Bakery. Literally an hour. This has happened in the midst of multiple developments on the outskirts. It is not exclusive. You don't have to have one or the other. The downtown, we need to connect the dots so that from William King to Courthouse Hill to Rain, tourists will park their car and walk the whole distance if you connect the dots. And what I mean by that is if I'm at William King and I say, well, if I walk a block further, there's an ice cream store. Well, if we walk a block further, there's a glass shop. If you connect those dots, they will spend the entire day going up and down there. So look at these 20 slots not as an albatross. Look at these 20 slots as a blank canvas. Recruit some of these one-offs, entrepreneurial, interesting things that I as a resident want, but that our tourists will come back for. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ashby Dickerson, 305 Fairway. I'm out of order here, but I just want to voice support for the Meals on Wheels and hope that the funding will be restored as quickly as possible.
My name is Aaron Hicks. I live at 1142 Panorama Drive, Abingdon, Virginia. I just came tonight to support the town council. Those prior, those today or tonight that are here, and you all have been newly elected in your support for the sports complex. Ms. Pillion spoke of the baseball. I can't speak to that, but I can speak to Highland Soccer. Has a pretty special place to me. We built that club from roughly 100 kids in the past 7 years to we have over 400 each season, 800 kids a year. If it wasn't for the town at the Coombs Center, if it wasn't for the school system at Abingdon High School and at Abingdon Elementary, we have no place to play. Numerous volunteers come out every day. We work on those fields. We fill holes in because they're overused by high school athletics. I personally have served as president, board member, and I'm currently a coach of 2 teams. I have gone out with my own money, my own time, 6 o'clock in the morning with my truck filling in holes, taking leaf blowers, blowing out numerous water holes, putting straw in them, extra dirt in them so our children can play. It is imperative that they have that opportunity. Now, we can get into tourism. We can get into what it will bring. You all know the answers to that. It's our children. Our children don't have an opportunity to come back here. I am probably one of few that has been able to come back and work here. Proud to say that I'm from Abingdon. For the past 16 years, I have been an Abingdon resident. So I know the lawsuit's been mentioned. I'm not here to talk about that. I've heard the snippets while you all are having your meeting from folks against it, for it. That's fine. But we need to come together for our children, okay? Their opportunity. We let children play on free, that have free or reduced lunch. They play for free. It's an opportunity for them to have an organized sport. You know, develop friendships that may last forever. Think about that. Think about that. And if you're against that, and people are truly against that, then I welcome you to show up to these games. Tell those folks, tell those children that they're not worth this. This is worth making happen. Show up to those games and look at those faces and them having fun. We don't do this as volunteers for us. We do this for all the children. All the volunteers that have stepped out, baseball, football, soccer that I've seen over the years, I am proud of those people. Proud to call them friends. We may disagree on things, but come Saturdays, Thursday nights, or Tuesday nights, we come together and we all are one big family. So I appreciate the effort that you all have put into that, and thank you all very much.
Thank you. Mr. Winship.
My name's David Winship. I live somewhere between 855 Edgemont North Street and 951 Timberland Court. Before my comments, I want to emphasize that there has been no opposition to sports complexes or playgrounds or whatever among those who are opposed to what is generally called the Meadows Project. But over a decade ago, Town Council at that time instituted some zoning regulations to manage big boxes in Abingdon, and citizens were proud that we had taken note, and the Town Council had taken note of what we consider the threat of these kind of big boxes in Abingdon. And now we feel betrayed. In all honesty, we do feel betrayed. Previous speaker spoke of a magic trick. I feel like we've been scammed by a huckster in a ball and cup and ball deal where we don't know what's going on. To allow this development contradicts zoning in place and the comprehensive plan. Recently, Peter Thiel, a corporate giant behind PayPal, spoke of his efforts to protect capitalism from democracy. Well, I'm here on the other side because I would really like to protect democracy from capitalism, and I think we've got a real down-home instance of it here as our own corporate giant has manipulated our town and town council into changing its rules to allow what Food City decides is right. I think democracy is under attack, and this makes me angry. I think town council, particularly the previous town council, had a hand in this, and this makes me sad. Earlier in his presentation, Mr. Spangler spoke of naming some road in this complex Robertson Road. And it makes me not only angry and mean to know that this town council supports a development that would honor the largest slave owner in Washington County in the years before the Civil War as an example of what we want to develop in this town. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Ms. Harmon, you do know that you are named on the lawsuit, so you have to be very careful about your comments because we cannot hold a hearing on the merits of the lawsuit.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
and if I do, I'm sure there are enough attorneys in the room to correct me.
Thank you.
I want to hear where I see several. They'll straighten me out, would you? Okay.
That's good.
Yes, I am Nan Harmon. I live at 498 Green Spring Road, better known as Plummertown Heights. And thanks for letting me speak tonight. I have something to add to Mr. Winship. Is this good or bad? Mr. Winship's comment. I think actually that Captain Robertson would roll over in his grave. You know, he talks about not honoring the civil, the slave owner. I think he would roll over in his grave if he saw this site plan here, and to say that we're going to destroy his beautiful meadows and wonderful green space in Abingdon. And also, I would like to, my disclaimer tonight is that I've just returned from Floyd County. Need I say more? Does everybody? Up from Floyd Fest. And the sensibilities there are, I guess, diametrically opposed to what we're dealing with here. And I was really sad as I walked out and the music was, behind me. I was really sad to leave Floyd and come back to this situation here, but here we are. I was told by an architect about the sports complex versus the development. This is last fall, end of last summer. He said, and I didn't know him. He just said this to me. He said, "Oh, that sports complex is eyewash." He called it eyewash. I'd never heard that term. He said it's eyewash for the development. They do. He said, "I've done it many times myself. They do it all the time. You put the development up front, then you have the public project in the back, and that's eyewash, and you get your development through." I don't know about all that, but I do know that, I think, Bob, you've said that you've been interested in the meadows for like 10 years, you know, looking at the meadows, or you've liked that.
That was one site we looked at.
Like, you know, and
several years ago.
And I've heard, you know, how all this spins around. You hear all these things. I haven't lived here for all these years, so I don't know. But people have said, oh, yeah, several people said that they had their eye on the meadows. And unfortunately, in this world, we do have to consider money and cost. Just like, what, $22,000 for the Meals on Wheels. They delivered meals to my dad, and it was more the companionship, you know, than the food. It was wonderful, and I'm going to make a donation for that too, because I think it's the best thing going. But we do have to. We have to weigh what we get with money. I wish I didn't. I wish we all didn't have to. But from what I've seen, the numbers on this sports complex and the roads coming in, the infrastructure. Hell, I'm just thinking about the toilets and the water, and not considering, you know, what's going to happen to my land. But we do have to consider cost. I think there are other places that would be cheaper and just as nice. And I'm a sports fanatic, actually. I love sports. I love watching sports. I love playing sports, always have. And it keeps children straight. You know, we've got a tough world out there, and kids need to stay. If you can keep them in sports, that's fantastic. And I didn't have kids. I'm kind of glad I didn't. But anyway, I digress. But I would like to submit this, and I would like to ask all of you, do you think that in, say, 5, 8, 10 years, things can change? Do things change? You don't have to answer that. What I'm saying is, I live on that interstate. I live at exit 17, and sometimes the noise, depending on the wind, the atmosphere, whatever, the noise from the draw, I call it, from the interstate bridge where the creeper trail goes under, and where the trucks come down through the back 40, the hayfield. Sometimes the noise from the trucks is louder than it is on exit 17. And I will tell you, if you spend the millions of dollars, first of all, you don't have room for expansion. You don't have any room, and you're going to need expansion and more space. But if you spend the millions of dollars for this, you will not be able to hear batter up. I would ask all of you and all of the Planning Commission to go stand out. You're outstanding in your field, okay? I'll give you that. Go out and stand in that field for 20 minutes or 10. Just go out there and stand. And if it doesn't deafen you, you talk about pollution, dust from the traffic, danger, maniacs on the road, whatever you have. The noise, and the parents and the grandparents, the first games that they have out there, and you have your bleachers or whatever you have, they're going to go, why in the hell did they build this sports complex here when you cannot hear the umpire? I'm not kidding. You need to go stand out there. And I don't know whose idea the amphitheater was. You won't be able to hear the violins. So I'm not against sports complex, but you can do it somewhere else, cheaper, with more room for expansion, and save our beautiful green space in Abingdon, one of the last beautiful green spaces. So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Edison Jennings. I live at 247 East Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia. I'm not here to engage in any false equivalencies regarding sports complexes and shopping centers and big box stores. just want to remind you, if you haven't considered it already, that Abingdon is at a critical juncture in its history. And the way you all legislate with regard to this pending complex will determine its future, for good or ill. I strongly suspect ill. And I would remind you that this is your legacy. Thank you.
First things first. I stepped out from
Excuse
my
me.
kitchen and
Please
I'm
list
sorry.
your name and.
Yeah, I'm Barry Proctor. I live at 927 Woodlawn Terrace here in this beautiful city. A couple of weeks ago, I stepped out from my kitchen into my garage, and I saw an absolutely beautiful 4-foot-long black snake crawling right next to my freezer. Now, it was a good thing it was me and not my wife, because I have an appreciation for black snakes. But I know why that black snake was in my garage, because he had been displaced from where the ground is being disturbed for the new Highlands Children's Community Center. And that is a wonderful thing. And I'm sorry the black snake had to move out, and maybe he's still under my freezer for all I know. But I don't mind the noise, I don't mind the traffic, I don't mind everything that's going on to build that, because that's the right place for the right project there. I don't think if there's anybody who's got a better sports dad pedigree than I do in this room, I'd like to see them. I've had 5 kids, 4 of whom played 4 years of college, I mean not college, but high school soccer. They helped to coach and referee intramural soccer in college. They played everything from the lower grades from elementary school all the way up, and it was a great program from there. So that sports complex is an absolutely great idea. It's just, in my opinion, in the wrong place. We've got an amount of land that's not adequate to adequately preserve the meadows and the historical use there, and to tell the story of what happened with a couple of centuries worth of slavery that went on out there. That's a story that needs to be told, and there's just not enough room to preserve that building and those grounds as it should be, and have a sports complex in the same place. And with the problems there, so we just need to make a choice. And is this town not big enough for both of those things to take place? I think that it is, and I think there's some new ideas here about maybe where that sports complex can be built and accommodate all the things that need to be done. So am I thankful for what this town has provided and what soccer has done and baseball and football and everything else for teaching the things that those sports teach? I certainly am. But I think that we need to make a very balanced choice here, and there's a story there that I think in this case takes precedence over that. And I would like to see not the dirt dumped from there to here to do that, but that land be preserved and that story told as it should be for this generation and many more to come. Thank you.
Nick Proctor, 11092 Treeline Drive. I made similar comments to the Planning Commission, but unfortunately I couldn't have the opportunity to give these comments before it went to vote for the COA, because that
Matter's not on the agenda. We're not going to talk about the COA. If you'd like to talk about something that was not on the agenda, we will hear you.
Well, what wasn't on the agenda is a public hearing for the COA.
We held 2 public hearings.
There was never a public hearing for the COA because it's been stated
Wait a second.
that
Wait
it
a second.
typically
Wait a
is held
second.
for the
We're
Planning
not-
Commission.
Madam Clerk, will you give us the proper procedure for all of this?
Well, the first thing I want to do is answer a question. Mr. Proctor, if you'll move over just one second, I'm trying to get Matthew Johnson's eye real quickly. If I understand it correctly, the COA was not required for a public hearing?
It is not a public hearing.
Per our current ordinances?
Correct.
It is not required as a public hearing at the Planning Commission level.
Okay.
Or at the council level. It's not a requirement.
But just a
Now,
little
if Mr.
sidebar now.
Proctor-
Now, I think that though, even though that wasn't a public hearing, you did allow people to, you did allow people to speak. Is that true? Or Wayne Austin did?
The Planning
Chairperson.
Commission, the chairman did allow public comment during that meeting, at the end of the meeting during public comment section of the meeting.
Well, I'd like to address the viewscapes. It's been told that specifically from Mayor Lowe that she is only here to act in the best interests of the town. And one of those perspectives that Mr. Spangler has left out numerous times is the perspective of the town, is that in a lot of what he's talked about is he's used the terms minimizing, mitigate the view shed impacts of the complex, well, not the complex, the shopping complex to the Creeper Trail. But that information has never been actually presented. So he says that a 10-foot berm will hide the view shed of the Food City from the Creeper Trail or Fort Cummings Street. How do we even know? We don't. There's been no view shed analysis from any perspective along this whole entire project. So at this point, it's kind of moot because it's already been passed. But that type of critical analysis is being left out, and it's really the blind leading the blind in many cases. So I would encourage you on the very few opportunities that you have going forward to really get the information and have it backed up in a graphic way, because it's not being presented now.
Thank you. See, this was really good for you to come tonight.
Leslie Bradley, 143 Stonewall Heights. Good evening. There was an article in Sunday's Bristol Herald Courier that said that the contingency fund for the town is now so low that all departments have experienced reductions and budget cuts. Meals on Wheels from that article has been totally defunded. I just simply don't understand how you can do that. Do we want to be a town that defunded Meals on Wheels? You have chosen to fund the Meadows Project at a time when shopping centers are failing nationally, one after the other. I think it is shameful to cut public services in favor of a project that the majority of voters in your town do not want. Is building a mall more important than helping feed our aging citizens? I don't really believe that any one of you think that. I don't think it's very wise.
One second, just 1 second, Dr. Moore. I do want to tell you that we did send a letter to the Abingdon Senior Center to come to the budget workshop and hearing. At the time, they were in transition. They did not have a director, and we didn't know where they were going to be. We knew that Washington County, Virginia gives them $50,000 a year for Meals on Wheels. And so while they were transitioning, we made the choice to give them operational funds so that they would have funds that were unrestricted, because Meals on Wheels is a restricted fund. So I hear your concerns, but we didn't have anybody from the senior center that contacted us with any information other than they did not have a director.
Then can that be rectified?
We are absolutely, as you've seen tonight, they are raising money, and we will keep an eye on this situation. You're welcome. Yes, Dr. Moore.
Jim Moore, 132 College Street. And yes, y'all be embarrassed for cutting out Meals on Wheels. I'm sure you were here in April. You got a phone? They've got a telephone. Why didn't you call them? I'll move on. I want to be crystal clear that no one that I am aware of or associated with is opposed to the construction of or need for a sports facility for the young people of this town or the county. All for it. In fact, almost 10 years ago, Judy and I offered the town 40 acres for a sports complex. That had been built. You folks, your kids would have already had a facility. They didn't take it.
We can't hear you.
Bob, you told me that you did not want that because of all the sites you looked at, you wanted the meadows because it was interstate visible. You could capture travel ball teams.
I didn't make the decision on the site.
That's
I
what
was,
you.
I was on the committee.
Yes,
to
that's
go
exactly what
around
you
and
told me
debate.
out on the site.
Don't want to take up your time.
With that information, we offered 15 more acres to give you access to exit 19. That was turned down too.
Was that
The-
free?
Half of it was free, yeah. We're going to give you 40 acres.
So you offered the town of Abingdon
40 acres.
for
We'd
free?
sell you cheap, the 15 to get you to exit 19.
Right, but it wasn't free.
15 was, we're going to sell it to you cheap and give you 40 acres free. We've already given you 5 acres. We've given the town over $250,000 in property and real estate. We're all for this town, helping the kids. It was turned down. The Meadows is not the right site. There's no room for expansion. It's an historic site. It's morally wrong to destroy it. It's ironic that you sent folks from town to a historic preservation conference this past weekend. At the same time, you're plotting to destroy one of the most beautiful and historic sites in town. Ironic, makes no sense. You can't expand there. The plan that you already have for that site is not big enough for the number of kids who want to use it. It's not safe. As Nan said, there's sound pollution, air pollution. Who would have thought that a tractor trailer would run off the interstate there and land on the creeper trail? It's not the right place. There are other places that are much better for a sports facility and for the kids. Road design to the place, not safe, as Wayne mentioned. The northeast corridor, or end of that street, comes down a 10-degree grade off that hill into an S-curve on a bridge over a creek. 10 degrees, that's mountain grade. If you've been down Sam's Gap, going to Asheville on I-26, that's only 6 degrees. This is 4 degrees more steep. Imagine that road in the wintertime, snow and ice. We have a hard time keeping the level sections of Main Street and Valley Street clean. Imagine what it's going to be like in the wintertime. Not very safe. Strongly advise that we do an archaeological survey on the 40 acres and not just start dumping dirt on historically significant areas of that property. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Donna Levine. I live at 350 Green Spring Road. I have a letter in my possession that's written to the Town Council of Abingdon. It's written by Nina Lindrose. I talked to Nina about some of her health experiences, and since I share some of that same history, I was really happy that after months of working on this information, she finally got it down on paper because it's very personal and it's very painful for her.
What is her address?
I'm sorry, I don't have her address right now.
She lives in the county, she's not an Abingdon resident, she lives between Bristol and here, and she walks the Creeper Trail.
To the Town Council of Abingdon, I am writing to share my personal story concerning my health issues in an effort to help the people, and especially the children of Abingdon, avoid any possible health risks should the town place any outdoor recreation facilities in the direct vicinity of Interstate 81 and Exit 17. 10 years ago, I became very ill to such a degree that it impacted how I was able to function in my day-to-day life. After seeing many different doctors, I finally received a diagnosis of environmental illness, environmental-induced asthma, and multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS. At that time, I only personally knew one person who had this kind of illness, and she was a personal friend of my family. Joanne became very ill after breathing smoke from a burning hotel where she had narrowly escaped. You may have heard about the fire at the MGM Grand Hotel fire in Las Vegas in 1980. Joanne became highly sensitive to smoke, chemicals of any kind, perfume,
all fragrances, chemicals in new carpet and furniture, and the list went on and on. Her life radically changed, and she could no longer do many of the things she had done before the fire. She was reduced to having to spend most of her time in her condo to avoid things that would make her ill. If you visited Joanne in her home, you had to take precautions so as not to make her ill. My mother was one of Joanne's close friends, and I can recall going with my mother to visit Joanne, always feeling sympathetic and also not really having a very good understanding of her condition. It seemed like such a strange illness, not something typical from the medical books. When I became ill, more than 20 years after Joanne became ill from the MGM fire, environmental illness suddenly became a lot more personal. I spent many hours researching the subject. I tried dozens of traditional and modern medicines, therapies, changing in diet, acupuncture, and on the list goes, some followed by slight and always temporary improvements, and always ending with a hopeless certainty that I would never, ever be well again. Realizing that a parking lot with running cars and the exhaust those cars emit, a bathroom when someone has sprayed air freshener, a building that has been sprayed for bugs or recently painted, or even riding a new car and the toxic odors the new upholstery and carpet emits could make me very ill. Years of researching this subject helped me understand that people get environmental illness a couple of different ways, either from a very intense exposure to chemicals or from a slow and continuous exposure. Joanne's illness was the result of the smoke and the chemical exposure she breathed from the burning building and its contents when she was trapped in the burning MGM hotel. My illness came from a lifetime of less intense but continuous exposures. Today, environmental illness has become a lot more mainstream. In many states, MCS is now recognized as a disability, and it is in my home state of Florida also. More people are becoming ill from the environment, and I have personally met dozens of people over the last 10 years that suffer from environmental illness to varying degrees. I have shared just a little of the personal and very painful story of my struggle with this disease in an effort to provide awareness of the risk to the health and welfare of the citizens and the youngest citizens of Abingdon, the children, that they could face should you move forward with your plans to place an outdoor recreation sports facility so close to a busy interstate highway. It is one thing to ride a bicycle under the interstate while on the creeper trail, but something else entirely to set people up so that they are spending hours, days, weeks, months in an unhealthy environment where they would be breathing the chemicals and emissions of thousands of automobiles as they travel up and down Interstate 81. This would be a travesty for Abingdon and its residents. Respectfully submitted, Nina Lindrose. I asked Nina to write this story because of my own experience with these problems. 20 years ago, Joe and I rented a truck to move our daughter and her belongings from our home in Florida to New York, where she would attend NYU. As the long trip progressed, I became sicker and sicker, and as exposure to interstate emissions continued. By the time we reached New York, I could not swallow. Months of trips to doctors followed, including to Mayo Clinic. My health did improve over time, especially while living in the Netherlands, but I continued to feel sick when driving on busy interstates. Any car we own now will have a HEPA filter, and I'll always have the button for recirculates turned on. Knowing what I know now, I cannot imagine allowing children to participate in sports activities near an interstate day after day. Their health and future is too important. As a member of Friends of Abingdon, I vote yes for a sports complex, but please let's find a safe and healthy location.
Donna was supposed to bring that up. Joe Levine, 350 Green Spring Road. I coached for over 10 years, So, I mean, I'm, like Barry, I'm a sports lover. Our daughter competed in gymnastics at a national level. We traveled to national meets in California, in New Jersey. I mean, so I understand both the travel part of it and I understand the coaching part of it. And I also support a sports complex, a very nice one for the town of Abingdon. Maybe Jim Moore's 40 acres, if we're good to him, he may offer it. Again, there are other places in Abington which would be better suited and certainly healthier for the children. So please reconsider what we're doing here. Let's not just blindly charge down the road of building a sports complex on the meadows. If we find a good place for a sports complex, it'd be great. I'd love to see the 40 acres of land that the Meadows property that the town now owns be turned into a outdoor museum, a really great tourist attraction, and a multi-use facility, but not a sports complex subjecting children to the interstate vapors. Thank you.
Sorry, I got out too late. It's all right, moving a little slow. Good evening. Mayor Lowe, congratulations on your appointment. I don't think I've seen you since the election.
I'm not gonna say congratulations on your broken arm.
Well, thank you.
But congratulations that you're halfway through the hill.
The chair won.
Yeah.
But I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Davina Sexton. I reside at 430 Fairway Drive. This is in the vicinity of the Green Springs and Green Springs Road and Cummings Street area over around exit 17, the area that is most directly affected by the Meadows project. We will all be affected by it, of course, but we feel it very directly in that area. You will know, I think, from our previous conversations that I am opposed to that project. I resent it and am saddened, to be honest with you, that it's come to be called the Meadows Project. That sounds like such an innocuous, very sweet little restoration project. But this is not a restoration project. This project, in fact, will destroy the meadows and will also hugely compromise a second historical property, the Virginia Creeper Trailhead, and I'm not sure to what ends. Tonight you have moved forward with yet another piece of this project, despite the fact that there's a lawsuit pending as to the legality of the process by which that initial rezoning decision was made, and from which all these later incremental steps will stem. And I will be honest with you when I say I do not understand that. And I will also ask you, what is your hurry? What is the hurry? I have voted for every one of you seated here. 3 of you I have voted for many, many times. You are my representatives and I am your constituent. And honest, as such, I really think I deserve an answer to that question. What is the rush here? What is the rush? If this project goes forward, and it very well may, I'm not stupid, I know how the world works, it very well may. But if it does, would it not be better if that happened in an environment of open and honest dialogue? What is your hurry? I and the others who oppose the Meadows project, many of whom call you friends, have worked with you for many years on many projects that have moved this town forward. I think we deserve that. And if this town exists beyond all of our imaginings of it and the actions we take in pursuit of those things, of what it is, what it has been, and what it will be, I think the town deserves that. Thank you for your time.
I'm Anita Manuel, and I live at 320 Madison Street Southeast, and I wasn't planning on speaking, but because MCS came up and environmental illness came up, I just wanted to share my own experience. I lived as a child by a refinery and by an oil field, and we played on dirt which was oiled. This was in Aruba. There was an Esso refinery my dad worked in. And I didn't have symptoms quite at that point, but by the time I was 15 years old, I was showing unexplainable problems. And it took me about 25 years to find a doctor who could actually diagnose it. And I did have diagnoses of environmental illness. And I actually, as things were unmasked, he said, what you've been carrying all these years, you just feel kind of tired, you feel a little achy, you feel this, you're off. But as those things got unmasked, it actually got worse and much more clear. And it has taken very many years to be able to be in a room like this, to be able to be in a workplace, to be able to do any of those things. And I still have to be careful. I would never get a new car. I have to buy non-VOC paint if I want to paint something. So those issues about exposure to fumes, actually, I want to encourage you to take it very seriously.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Leslie Maris. The people of Abingdon call me Paco. I live at 216 Fulkerson Street, right behind Dairy Queen. And to be completely honest, I'm extremely nervous to talk to you guys. So I pray that you'll bear with me. This is the first time I've done this. I've never stepped in this room or talked to anybody here. So again, I hope that you bear with me. And I'll just begin. There's two things I'd like to discuss and talk about, and I hope to not take up anybody's time. I'm one of the millions of people around the nation that was inspired by Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont to enter the political process. So here I am, and it's my intentions that you guys will see a little bit more of me. Hopefully I'm not nervous next time.
Don't be nervous.
I'm extremely nervous, I'll be honest. My wife and I, we just purchased a home, again, on 216 Fulkerson Street. Of course, I'm 100% aware that when I bought the home at a fairly reasonable price, it had problems with it. I understand the majority of the problems I'm responsible for. I understand that. However, I assume there are a few problems that the town may be responsible for. I lived at my home for 2 years, going on 2 years, and I've spent the better part of a year, maybe a year and a half, getting to know the people in my community, getting to know the people on my street and in my neighborhood. And I come to the conclusion that the majority of all the houses are older houses. They were mostly built in the 50s, I assume, 60s, I assume, and they are very old. I'm renewing, remodeling, doing everything I can on my end. But like I said, I feel like there are a few problems that the town may be responsible for. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel that most of my neighbor, actually, I can think of 5 neighbors off the top of my head who have physical disabilities. I'm sure they're not going to come here and bring these problems to you guys. So I'm hoping that I can speak for them as well as myself. On my road, of course, we're at the top of the hill. If any of you guys know where I live at there, we're on the top of the hill. All that water that comes on the road there, it just pours down into every one of our yard. It goes from our yard directly into our basement. Every one of my neighbors, including myself, has extreme water problems in the basement. I feel that I can do certain things to put a Band-Aid on the problem, but if we were to fix the problem, come up with a solution for everybody on my entire street, it seems like the simple solution would be build a curve, to direct that water away from all of our houses. I asked the council, would that be a possibility? This is the first time I've been in contact with the town. I'm not sure if you guys are the people I need to ask about this. I assume you are.
I'm going to let Mr. Kelly answer that question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. If you will set up an appointment to come see me and some of my staff, Mr. Dew, we can take a look at the situation, come out and look at it with you and see if there's a way that some correction can be made to it.
Awesome.
But that would be the first step, just to come see me, and I'll arrange for Mr. Dew to be present.
Awesome. Thank you very much. If I may bring up another matter. Sure. If you'll give me a moment to center myself and collect my thoughts. Again, I'm nervous.
It's all right.
This is the first I have heard of the sports complex. I promise you I will gather more information. I'll do research for myself. I'll do what I can to learn more about this thing. I've heard many people talking about this, discussing it. I've heard multiple comments as far as team sports go. I've heard baseball, football, soccer, etc. If I can speak about myself briefly, I know Abingdon is not a ghetto by no means. Trust me, I lived in LA. I know what a ghetto is, right? But if I can speak freely and use the word the streets, I hope you guys know what I'm talking about. When I was a young kid growing up in Abingdon, Virginia, here in Highland Street and B Street, it was not basketball that kept me off the quote-unquote streets. Meaning I dabbled into juvenile delinquency, things I'm not proud of, things I shouldn't have been doing at a young age, right? I'm sure we've all been there. But it was not basketball that encouraged me to be a better person. It was not soccer. It was not football. The only thing that encouraged me to be a better person was the individual sports. I understand team sports have their place. They have their merit, absolutely. But there are a few individual sports that I feel that need to be mentioned here. I heard one gentleman there in the past that spoke previously. He did mention gymnastics. I assume, he can correct me if I'm wrong, I assume his daughters might have went to Mountain Empire Gymnastics, which is the same building that I am an assistant instructor in martial arts at. Silam Kung Fu is what I teach. Kung Fu is what kept me, quote unquote, off the streets. It was martial arts and competing not with other people, but competing with myself. And competing in the gym and competing with again, all these sports are great. Basketball is great, but there are other sports out there. There is Taekwondo, there is Kung Fu, there is Wushu, there is boxing, there is wrestling, there is Judo, there is Jiu-Jitsu. Every one of these sports is an individual sport that is in the Olympics. And I ask the town, I assume you guys are the people I should discuss with this, is there room in the sports complex to teach the kids these martial arts, these other sports that fail to be mentioned?
I would think that would be something that could be considered at our Coombs Recreation Center. Have you talked to anybody up there?
Actually have. We actually have, again, I'm an assistant instructor in Kung Fu.
Okay.
I've actually had a few of my mentors and instructors teach various classes at the Coombs Center.
Okay.
Over time, somehow that has fizzled out, and we do not teach up there currently. But again, I ask in the sports complex thing that's happening here, going on, would that have room for martial arts programs for anyone of the age of 5, 6, and up, even to the adults? Would that be possible?
Right now, the way that the sports complex is being developed, there's not a sheltered place. It's like the outdoor sports rather than any of the indoor sports. But I think that but Bob's exactly right. I would approach the Coombs Center. They have quite a bit of space up there. Kevin Worley, who is normally here, is not here tonight. He was here earlier, but he had a tournament or something.
No, we had a power pole.
in one of the sports fields, and so he had to go for that, or he would normally be here. But I would talk to Kevin Worley, and if you, for whatever reason, usually Kevin's very accessible. If not, I'm sure Mr. Kelly would be glad to direct you. Or actually, our assistant town manager, Cecile Rosenbaum, is very accessible, and she would be glad to get you and Kevin together.
Okay. I would like to mention one more thing regarding this. I participate in various events, compete in various events. I'm sure you guys are aware of what mixed martial arts is. I do that.
My son won a bronze medal.
Really? That is awesome.
In karate.
Yes, that is awesome. If it would please the town, of course, I'm sure this would be something that many people would have to come together and discuss and talk about. But for many years, I have had the dream of creating Abingdon Mixed Martial Arts. You know, I would love to do that. I know that there is the Highlands Wrestling Club. I am a member of the Highlands Wrestling Club that is directed by Coach Scott, who, you know, deals with the wrestling team, high school team. That's wrestling. Wrestling is great. Wrestling is only one aspect of mixed martial arts. If it would be possible, I would love to create, you know, teach, instruct, or just join Abingdon Mixed Martial Arts. Do you guys think that would be a possibility?
I think that all of the things you brought up will be something that Ms. Rosenbaum and Mr. Worley can talk to you about as far as the Coombs Recreation Center is concerned. And
sorry.
if you'll leave your contact information with Ms. Okay.
I do know that the Coombs Rec Center kind of shied away to the idea of mixed martial arts at the Coombs Center.
How long ago?
I spoke to them about, if I were to take a guess, I'd say about 8 months ago, earlier in the year, maybe last year. Thank you very much. I hope I did not waste anyone's time.
You
Thank
did not. Thank you.
And thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Thank you.
They're getting ready to go up to the next color.
Okay. So we are down to matters not on the agenda. We had a presentation by Mr. Kelly that we would like to hear about the support for the United Way Splash Park.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, I was approached last week by representatives from the United Way, and they had a proposal that perhaps incorporated in the sports complex in a playground area could be a splash pad for which they have a grant opportunity with Bristol Speedway for children's charities. And they're capable of getting a grant of about $50,000 with matching funds that they have, and then some fundraising that they have in mind, and perhaps have it incorporated into the town's sports complex so that kids who are there during the game, while others are playing games, smaller kids would be able to participate in the splash pad. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to have such a facility. Most of the localities around us are building similar facilities. You may have heard about the Steel Creek Park facility. There's a small or a small splash pad down in the city of Bristol, and Kingsport and Johnson City have splash pads as well. All they are asking for at this point in time is to be able to apply for the grant, but they do need to have a letter of support from the council. And what I would propose is, if the council is on board with this, is that they authorize me to execute a letter of support of our commitment to assist with the possible development of a splash pad at the sports complex.
Council, do you have any questions?
And Ms. Lowe, you have a photograph there if you want to.
I showed it. I'm going to give it to our newspaper reporter in just a few.
And I will point out that's not actually what will be designed. That's just a concept from another location. We're not exactly sure what this one would look like. It would have to be planned for and designed ultimately. But tonight, all we're asking for is just a authorization to support the concept and the project.
Council, any questions?
What is, and I guess I missed this when you just said, what do we think that the total cost of this is? I know that Bristol and them, or Bristol and Kingsport's about $250,000 something. Are we thinking that range or less, or?
That's what was indicated to me. About $200,000 would be total cost of the project. And if council will recall, we priced a splash pad down at the park across from the post office a few years back, and I believe it was in the $200,000 to $250,000 range. But it was a much different design than what you have here. It was not as nearly as a playful look as this particular design was. But I'm guessing if they've done their math correctly, and Deb's out there nodding, I would say it's in the $200,000 range.
And there will be fundraising efforts for that, right?
Yeah, there'll be fundraising efforts for that, but there may be the need for the town to kick in money if, in event, the funds do not all come through. But there would at least be the $100,000.
Miss,
The biggest responsibility of the town would be to accept the gift.
thank you.
How much money did you say this was going to cost total, please?
Approximately $200,000.
Greg, I've got a couple of questions. There's been a lot of discussion here tonight about the location of the sports complex. First off, if the grant funds were received, would it be flexible? In other words, could they move to another sports complex at another location if that's what the council decided?
I did not specifically ask that question, but I would assume that if this one did not ultimately come to fruition and we did one elsewhere, I'm sure they would still have the same ambition to try to incorporate it into the sports complex. But that would be a question I'd have to go back to them and ask.
Okay.
And I have another question as well, please. What type of fundraising efforts could we possibly do?
We as the town or the United Way?
Well, we as the town, if we have to come up with the rest of the money.
I think we've done a similar project at the Coombs Center with this special needs or
The bricks, they sold the bricks.
Well, yeah, do that, plus just contributions from several local businesses. They raised quite a bit of money. Just Kevin did a good job with that. I mean, that's what I would envision.
And one
Yes,
more,
ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
And one more time, how much was United Way going to donate?
They will provide the matching funds for the grant, which is $50,000. The grant would be $50,000, and so United Way would contribute $50,000. And then there would be approximately $100,000 to raise. It might be a situation where you got corporate donors for this, for perhaps even naming rights. I'm not sure.
Mr. Kelly, did you, and maybe I just missed this, when we were talking about it before, didn't we mention this downstairs, that they were going to try to raise additional funds as well as over and above the $100,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would Miss Eisenhower, you want to come up and give us some details? Come, no, I want you to come up. We want you on the record.
I'm Deborah Eisenhower. I live at 327 Pinehurst Court. And I am the chair of the board for last year and this year for the United Way Fund Drive. And I can tell you that refocusing of much of the emphasis in the community has been towards healthiness within the school systems, within the neighborhoods, within the 13 counties and 2 cities. And that being able to, this was not at all my idea. This was a surprise for me at the last executive board meeting. And when it was announced that it would be in Abingdon's location, they'd made that decision that if indeed, and they feel very optimistic about being able to get this grant, that it would be here and it would add to the physical fitness, the basic need for looking after the health of our children. So I'm not saying that you all can't go right out there and go running through the splash pad. That'd be pretty funny. So we'll welcome you up front if this does all come to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help me one more time. How much, if we apply for this grant, we're not actually committed to to do this, well, all we're doing is applying for a grant, is that correct?
No, United
Letter
Way
of
will be
support.
the actual applicant for the grant. We're just providing basically a letter of support at this point in time and our willingness to try to incorporate this into our project.
But the town would be expected to make the match for this grant, is that right?
No,
No.
no,
Okay,
United Way.
United Way's gonna do it.
And the town has had its own United Way Drive that our group has chaired for the last 7 years. And we've met our drive goals every time. You know,
Painfully so.
The two over on the end gave me really ugly looks with that because we've really worked hard at it. But we've done a good job.
Yes, you have. Council, what's your pleasure?
I'll move that we authorize Greg, Town Manager Greg Kelly, to write a letter of support for the application of grant and additional funds and commitment to try to make this project come to fruition.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Wait a minute, Kathy, can I discuss this? I want to be absolutely clear that I'm in favor of the project. I want to be absolutely clear that when I vote for this, there's if I vote for it, there's no inclination or no perception that I'm approving the location of the sports complex. That's not, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Craig.
Aye.
Mrs. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Howard.
Aye.
Mr. Humphries.
Aye.
Mayor Lowe.
Aye. Okie dokie. So, where are we? We are down to appointments to boards and committees. And we have up for reappointment John E. Lagarde III on the Economic Development Authority, who is eligible to serve another term and who has been an outstanding member, I will say.
May I comment?
Yes.
Well, wait a minute. Can I mention, before everybody leaves, please think about being on these commissions. And you can go online and be on these commissions. It is a good way to be involved in local politics and know what's going on. It's a good way to be able to be at the meetings and know when they're going to happen. So I would strongly suggest anybody that's interested in the town of Abingdon to please apply for these. Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was brought to our attention that from both Mr. Lagarde and from Rachel Folks that they do not wish to serve further on this committee.
Well, darn.
Yeah, he texted me today and said he would rather not. He's got some obligations with his church right now. He's over the building, and that takes up a lot of his time.
I've been watching John outside the Sinking Spring Presbyterian
Right.
Church day after day after day, looking at things and talking about things. So I knew that he had a commitment somehow there.
So, council, would you be in favor of putting this on the town's website as open appointments and moving this to the September meeting? Okay. So we will do that.
Get formal resignations from both of those folks before we advertise that. It's just a matter of, procedure, and we don't have those yet, so we'll get them to put that in writing.
If John was up for reappointment, it's not necessary for him to give a resignation, is it?
It just
No,
to let
you-
us know that he doesn't wish to serve any longer.
Yeah, actually, you serve until you're reappointed, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, you serve until you're reappointed, so he's they're both kind of stuck until we get them replaced.
Right,
so.
gotcha.
And they're willing to do that, yeah.
And appointment of members to the Sustained Abingdon Committee. Yes, sir. You look like you want to speak again.
Yes, ma'am. It's my understanding that we have no new applications for the Sustain Abingdon committee other than the ones who have
That are on the spreadsheet.
that are on the spreadsheet. So if council wishes to make an appointment from that, they can. Otherwise, we need to advertise this for new applications as well.
Well, let's just advertise them both.
And we have for the past 3 weeks. It's just
Damien hears that we have committee openings on the Economic Development Authority and on the Sustain Abingdon Committee, don't you? Thank you very much. Okay, so we're down to council member reports. Mr. Craig?
I don't have one.
Okay. Ms. Patterson?
Well, recently I took a trip to Richmond to learn my council duties, and I was very impressed with the teachings that I went through. Got to learn a lot of things, and it was very educational.
Good. We're glad, and you had a good time.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't do anything extravagant, but I sure did learn a lot.
Okay, that is good. Mr. Humphrey?
I only have one thing, and it's and I wanted to bring it up downstairs rather than upstairs, and I don't know exactly who would even administer this, but lately there's been a lot of tractor trailers coming off of 19. So apparently the GPS is redirecting them to come off of 19, coming from the coal fields down Russell Road and on to either Main Street or to Cumming Street in order to get to exit 17. I mean, 17. So I know that at least 3 tractor trailers that I counted today did that, and and what I was wondering is, because I haven't seen them, are the no through truck signs. And so if we could get some no through truck signs reposted at the exit they come off of course, as we know, there's probably a good as Fields Pen comes about, one of the big causes of the soil disturbance of Fields Pen was tractor trailers and large vehicles disturbing it. It's going to end up costing several $100,000 to fix that, and if we fix it and it continues, the tractor trailers to use that, and when they come to the erratic stop, shake the ground over a period of years and years, we're going to be back in the same spot. So no through truck signs. That's the only thing I have.
We can look into that, and we've explored it somewhat in the past, but we'll look back into it.
One to do with the construction at 14, is having any impact on that?
If that might be what's doing it. I mean, it very well could do it. But I mean, it's just been like what I consider an inordinate amount. It kind of maybe kind of slowed down for for a while, for a year or so after the power plant project over at Virginia City finished up, but now it's kind of back there, and it could be 14's what's doing it. It could be. Yep.
Mr. Howard?
No, I have nothing.
I received a letter today from Mark Warner, United States Senator, and he says, "Dear Mayor Lowe, I am pleased to extend my warmest congratulations to the town of Abingdon upon its recognition as a Tree City USA community by the Arbor Day Foundation. This honor serves as a tribute to your community's exemplary leadership in protecting the environment. You have demonstrated your commitment to tree care and establishing healthy community forests. These efforts improve the community's air and water quality. As good stewards of the Commonwealth, we must cherish our natural resources and protect them so future generations can enjoy them as we have. Your community's commitment to preserving the environment is commendable. On this important occasion, I wish the town of Abingdon the very best for continued success in the years to come." We have several announcements. As you know, the Virginia Highlands Festival is going on July the 29th through August the 7th. August the 1st through the 7th is telling the stories at the Abingdon Muster Grounds from 1 to 4. And they have had a very successful year with the children of not only this community, but surrounding communities. August 27th is the Living History presentations at the Abingdon Muster Grounds. August 20th, a night with Janis Joplin opening performance at the main stage of the Barter Theater. September 21, 22, 23, a call to arms at the Abingdon Muster Grounds. September 24, Over Mountain Victory Celebration at the Abingdon Muster Grounds.
Can I
And
say something
Mr.
about that?
Humphreys.
Yeah, I just want to. There's something we haven't done in several years, and it's because that all the troops marched off, or the gentlemen that are the Over Mountain Victory Trail Association have left the grounds normally before there is an adult component to our celebration. We have 1,500 school children, approximately 500 school children a day from the 21st through the 23rd. That will be a Friday. On the 24th, the reenactors and the people who normally leave, they're actually paid people who do demonstrations and do all types of different things. They will have agreed to hang over for an extra day, and they will be there to do an adult component to do exactly what we do for the kids, which is 15 stations, and you can go around all the stations and learn about what happened in colonial times and exactly how that the people in this area survived and lived during those times. I see Boots back there, and Boots is our good neighbor that's right across the street, and I'm sure Boots could tell you all about it and about how that there's a lot of kids down there. So that's it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, another one that's not on here is the Appalachian playwright readings at the end of August.
Very good.
I think it's like the 18th, 19th.
Very good.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you. So with no further business, I'll call this meeting adjourned.